Hey, Building Thinking Classrooms, Chapter 9. The way it's titled is it's how we use hints and extensions in a thinking classroom. Essentially, it's how to get through your curriculum. This one was a really meaty chapter. Like I've been taking notes in slides, and up to this point, I've been able to put a chapter in one slide, and this one was two slides. So this may be a two-part video. We'll see how far I get through this one. Essentially, it's talking about how to address curriculum. So typically, what will happen is you will do non-curricular tasks for the first couple of lessons. He recommends 2 weeks to kind of build new habits. And a lot of teachers would like freak because you have to get through your curriculum. And so the really cool thing is that when you have a thinking classroom, students actually move through curriculum faster. So for example, in science, like in a physics, in a progression, we normally would do like distance, displacement, time, then a lesson on speed and velocity, then a lesson on DT, graphs, then a lesson on acceleration, and then the next one. But we actually can probably combine some of those together in some cases, because if we're in a thinking classroom, then students will be able to do things like differentiate the difference between speed and velocity a lot faster, or differentiate the way the graphs move between each other. I don't need to spend 3 lessons on that. I can probably do one and just like bulk pack it. And the trick is by creating like a series of questions that get progressively more difficult as you go through. So the trick is in question design. And you don't want to give them everything all at once, because that will then create this like race to the finish kind of system. What you want to do is create a series of questions and give them to them one at a time. And then as groups finish up with that task, they'll ask you to come over and check their work. You'll go over and check their work. And then if you feel they're ready to move on to the next task, then you'll give them the next question. Or if you think that they struggled a little bit, you can give them like a parallel or like a same difficulty question instead of increasing the difficulty. And then you can kind of tailor it as groups need. You may think to yourself, how in the world am I going to get all this done and get to every group all the time as they finish up? And this is the best part about having a vertical classroom, is that as groups finish up, if they notice that you as the teacher are busy with a group, they can just do a quick scan of all the other boards and then say, oh, that's the next task we're working on. We'll work on that one too. And then they can just have both solutions on there until you have time to come to them. The other really cool thing they talked about in this chapter is kind of the progression of learning, which is what I've been doing in my gradeless classroom on this division to mastery. But what was really cool was they added a level in between. So I had always thought like there's the ability to do and then the ability to explain. And they slipped in a justification level in there. And I think that's really smart. So for example, instead of giving students the next question, you can ask them the question, okay, would you bet $100 that your answer is right now? And then that causes them to go back and like justify their answer and think about it. And then as they justify it, they become better at explaining their ideas to you. So that justification step, I think, is a really great addition in there. So now my progression will always be like doing, justifying, explaining, and then teaching, which I think is kind of the standard like mastering level is the ability to teach someone else. Then that in theory means you would have mastered that skill. So you can also capitalize that. So if you've got a couple of groups that are stuck and one that's really far ahead and they're really good at explaining things, you can ask them to go teach like a trick to one of the other teams that's struggling and kind of use that knowledge and mobilize that knowledge in the classroom and have it kind of flow around, which is really cool. Your progression and design of your questions, you want to be really careful about your balance, because you want to keep them not bored, but also not frustrated. So you want to keep them in this, like what they call the flow zone. So you want to keep them in there, and some groups will move faster through things and some groups will move slower, and that's totally okay. And so you can like slow groups down by forcing them to teach other groups. You can speed things up by having those, if you're not available, having people come over and teach people. So it's a really cool system that works out really well to just have this like knowledge and understanding. And the really neat thing that really struck home with me was that he said that our lessons are typically designed to be able to do the hardest question that we're going to assign that day. But in that 5-minute window, essentially what you want to do is teach them so they can do the first problem of the day or the easiest one of the day. And then if you step up the intensity sequentially, then you'll be able to just teach them to do the easiest problem. And then they should be able to then apply what they did in the first problem to build on it, to build on it, to build on it. So it's kind of cool. It's going to involve a really big shift in how I normally set questions up, just to make sure they're tailored and tweaked to the right progression and like how many questions we can get through a class and that kind of stuff. So lots to think about from this one, lots to unpack from this one. If there's one chapter, this was a big one.